All right, a very special episode. This is something a little bit different for us. First of all, it feels like worlds colliding. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, best-selling author, and Bill Belichick kind of needs no introduction, an incredibly successful NFL coach, now coaching in the college ranks. They're buddies, sort of an unlikely partnership, kind of like you and me.
Exactly. And here are two guys that are from two different worlds, but have been masters at pattern recognition. And they also share a lot of the same core values and principles.
Yeah, so principles is the key word there. It was the book that Ray Dalio wrote, runaway bestseller. It inspired Bill Belichick to write The Art of Winning. They're going to dig deep and tell us about the lessons that they learned. I'm so excited. Let's get after it.
Let's do it.
We have two people who you might be a little bit surprised to see together. This is so cool for us. A very special conversation. Ray Dalio, Bill Belichick, welcome to the deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. So we have you here because you guys are buddies. Like, we're buddies, you're buddies. Like, you know, how I got to ask you to start. Ray, how does this happen? Like, how does this friendship come together?
I get a call from him. Whoa, Bill Belichick giving me a call?
When is
Take
this?
it from there.
When is this, Bill?
About 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I read Ray's book and
Principles, New York Times bestseller.
And we're about the same age. And as he's going through his life, I'm relating to the times, and he's going through his career and the principles. Every page is like, that's what I'm trying to do. God, I love the way he articulated that. And it's page after page after page. And this is amazing. I mean, I fell in love with the book, but I connected, I felt like, to every single principle, not just one, but A, B, C, D, and then the little numbers with it too. And so I called him and I said, Ray, I'd love to talk to you. This is an amazing book, best I've ever read.
Principles of success. Like, what was so incredibly cool is here we are in two totally different domains, and we have the exact same principles for success, which we believe are universal principles for success. Like, I out of his book, I've got a bunch here. If people understand these principles, whatever they're doing, it is a path to success.
And Ray, talking about those principles, and I know we're going to get into a few of those, this is such an important writing. When did you formulate this idea and then share it with the world, which you're doing, God's work right now, because I can't wait to hear more about these principles.
Well, two things. When I was making investment decisions, I thought, well, what are my criteria for making the investment decisions? So I should write them down, see how they would have worked in the past, and so on. How do you keep a team of 1,500 people tight? What are you doing? Why am I making the decisions? So I would write down principles. Then I started to realize same things happen over and over again, right? Same things happen in his game, in my game, your game, same thing. So then you start thinking about principle, not just the thing that you're doing at the time. And when I started to do that, it became a habit in my life. And so that was what was incredibly cool when he called, and same principles. These are the gifts that he and I want to give, right? And I'm sure that they'll resonate with you, but they're principles for success, whatever your domain is.
Yeah.
All right, so that's your meet cute. There's a meet cute between you two that has echoes of that, I think, right, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I've always admired Bill at everything he does, the way he comports himself. Obviously, I'm friendly with Tom, and just
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, I'm sorry.
He's just Tom around here, apparently.
The fact that one of the things, you have an economics degree, okay, but you're also a world-class communicator. And one of the greatest motivators, and I think, Pat Riley is another guy we've spoken about.
Yes. That's
an incredible motivator. I'm wondering, and I'll get back to how we connected, but where did you learn that? The ability to motivate and articulate at a really high level?
I think it's one of those, I was an only child, so didn't have any siblings to communicate with. But I think it was really from being around my dad, around the Naval Academy, around those Navy football teams, and watching the way that they interacted, the way they taught, the way the coaches taught, the players learned, the communication and the interaction between the staff, the players, and those teams. As I was growing up, hanging around my dad and hanging around those great Navy teams of the 60s, and the Roger Staubach, Tom Lynch, Pat Donnelly, Jim Campbell, and those guys that were just, they were my heroes, they were my idols, and I learned a lot from watching them. I didn't know I was really learning it, but I think in retrospect, that's where a lot of it came from, because they were great communicators, great teammates, very unselfish, and there was never any indecision. It was clear cut. Here's the way it is, and we do it, execute it.
So I do want you to tell the story only because I do think one of the interesting lessons that we hear on this show, and we're certainly hearing from you guys, is this idea of if you want to meet somebody, like reach out to them. Now, you got a call from Bill Belichick, you got a call from Alex Rodriguez, you're picking up the phone, but and maybe Jason Kelly, I don't know. But like, tell us about the moment where because you've been very good about this throughout your career, Alex, of being like, I want to learn from that guy. So what inspired you to call him?
I mean, people like Ray and Bill, they're some of the greats of all time, right? And I just reached out and didn't think I would get a text back because we don't really know each other.
So you just hit him with like a, hey, bro,
yeah,
like, what are you up to?
I actually texted him. I got his phone. I said, hey, Alex Rodriguez. I'm kind of paraphrasing. Obviously, big fan of you. Congrats on your past season. If you're ever in Florida, maybe we can go on go to lunch, go to dinner. And he reached back very nice. He goes, he's a big baseball fan too. And we have a lot of mutual friends, Joe Torre and all other people. And he said, sure, I'll be down in Florida. I'll give you a call when I'm down there. So when he got to Florida, we went a couple times. We've had a nice dinner and we've had a really, really nice time.
You have developed these relationships, close relationships with athletes over your entire career. And you talk about sort of admiring the guys who played for your dad. But when an athlete like Alex reaches out, like what are you thinking and what are you thinking in terms of like what you can learn? Because that actually goes right into some of the principles that are here in this book.
Well, one thing about pro sports and competitive sports is other people in your sport aren't that excited about helping you.
And so, great point.
You go to another coach in the NFL, and how much does he really want to help you? How much you really want to help him? You can have a good friendship and a relationship with him, but there's a little holding back. And I think that a lot of my closer relationships with people like Alex and Joe and Tito Francona in the baseball world, because I would, I came to the Yankees camp several times and watched you guys work and talk to Joe and how Joe managed his professional athletes and how other coaches, Pat Riley, and other coaches in other sports handled their athletes. And there's Tony La Russa. There's some common ground there. Different sports, but coaches handling pro athletes and pro teams. And the conversation's a lot easier than it is when you're trying to, he told me something about that player. He told me something about that play. You're kind of holding back there. And so, Alex and I had dinner several times and we talked and it was a great conversation and free flowing. There's nothing to hide.
Right.
It was a very open conversation and relationship. And I love that.
So all I'm hearing, but just so you know what it's like to go through my ears, is like, I want that guy's principles. Like, don't you want Bill Belichick's principles?
Yes.
Okay. Don't you want that guy's principles? Every decision that's made is just an execution of those principles to the formula of success. So you can imagine the conversation we had.
So on that point, Ray, like what is something from Bill's book that is a commonality? Like what is something you saw that he's done in football that you were like, I do that as an investor, or, people who are listening or watching can apply that to their businesses?
So there's being successful yourself, and then there's running an operation that's successful, right? So there are principles for each of those things. His and mine are identical. Okay. They're just applied. Now, can I read you a few?
Yes.
Sure. I'll give you. Okay.
Give us one that you're most excited about.
I'm going to give you a few.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have to give you a few. So, picking somebody. He says, do you love the game? Do you work hard? Are you intelligent? If the answers are yes, yes, and yes, we're good to go. Okay, so now think about that. That's absolutely right. Okay, what do I want? You have to love the game. This is true in my game.
Right.
I play a game. Okay, very competitive game.
Investing, you're talking about.
Investing.
Yeah.
You know how every minute of every day you get either punched in the face or rewarded.
Can I take a beat on that one,
Sure.
though? I want to come back to another principle, because when you tell that story, I think about one number, It's a page in your book that's dedicated to a very specific person whose name has already come up, and that's Tom Brady,
Yeah,
right?
so page 199, I love this because Tom Brady was the 199th pick. Like, so the data would probably suggest, Bill, you probably should stay away from this guy. But there's something specifically that you saw in Tom that nobody else saw.
That's it. Yeah. Tom Brady played as a backup quarterback to Greasy. Greasy went in the NFL. Tom was a senior.
This is University of Michigan.
At the University of Michigan. Tom was a senior. And evidently they had promised Drew Henson, who was a big recruit as a freshman, playing time as a freshman. So Tom was the starter, but Henson played a lot, and it didn't look like he was quite ready to play. Tom would play, and then Henson had some issues, and then Tom would finish the game. And finally in the Orange Bowl against Alabama, it was Tom's best game, his final game, and you could really see him play. Talent was okay, but he was very smart. He loved football, and he worked extremely hard. And so he came in as our fourth string quarterback in 2000, fourth, which no team carries four quarterbacks.
Right.
And honestly, two of the guys in front of him weren't all that good. So that's where he was, but he became great. And day after day after day after day, he just kept improving. And I signed a player, Damon Heward. I signed a player from Miami as the backup quarterback in 2001 because I wasn't sure Tom was going to be a backup quarterback. Tom beat him out in training camp and became the number 2. And then, unfortunately, when Bledsoe got hurt, Brady got his opportunity. And he played well. We had a good team. He played well. We won a championship. But we weren't great offensively. We only scored 3 touchdowns in 3 postseason games. And then in 2002, by 2003, he became really good, great, and had a great, great career.
I want to double up on that because specifically, as he walked around the hallways, in the locker room, in the weight room, in the video room, was there something specific that you just kept looking at this guy and go, this guy's the real deal. He's not messing around. He is consistent. What was it about him that you said, let me take a double look at Tom?
His improvement, his work ethic and his improvement and his leadership. We had a young team in 2000, and he kept a lot of the rookies and first-year players out, and they would just run plays after practice by themselves. And he ran it, and you could see his leadership that, hey, we're doing this wrong on the play, or hey, you need to go in motion faster, or whatever it was. And you could see his leadership start to take over amongst the rookies, not as a team leader, but as the rookies. And then once he became the quarterback, then his leadership really accelerated. He worked out with the offensive lineman. He hung out with the offensive lineman. He was just one of the guys. He wasn't some prima donna quarterback. He connected to everybody. The guy who picked up the towels in the locker room, to the owner, to everybody in between. And I was fortunate that year I met with him. Unfortunately, our quarterback coach died that year, and so Charlie Weiss and I kind of co-coached Brady. And double teamed him in terms of trying to accelerate his knowledge and his experience. But he became a special guy, and his work ethic, his competitiveness, his toughness, his intelligence, eventually took him past other players who were more talented.
Yeah, interesting. Just to follow up on that, you write something in your book that I found so interesting, which is he was, and keep me honest here, I believe you wrote, he was hard to coach because he was so prepared.
Yes.
And so how do you do it? Like, I mean, I would imagine this is something you run into in your business, Ray, right?
It's identical.
Yeah. And so go ahead.
No, if you're listening to him the way I'm used to listening, he was describing Tom Brady. Okay. He's also describing the recipe. Okay. He was coachable. He was humble. He would pick up okay, now you can write these things down. That's the formula. Once you start to think about I look for the same things, right? Okay, so now if you're thinking, how do I run a team? And you write them down in the general case, not just the particular. There's Tom Brady, that's the story of him. But if you say, what's a winner? How do you pick a winner? It's the same qualities.
Right. And so in the case of Tom Brady, Bill, he's harder to coach. So how do you do it? Because again, I'm thinking about Ray's business, I'm thinking about Alex's business, I'm thinking about my business. You have these superstars who like show up, they work hard, they're ready to go. So what's the secret to managing them?
Yeah, so when I always felt like I was really well prepared when I went in and talked to Tom, and I tried to teach him from a coaching standpoint what he needed to know, which was what the defensive coordinator was thinking on the other side of the field. That was the big thing.
Wow.
And we got into a situation where, I went in there and I said, Tom, here's what they're playing. And I said, and it was a coverage that they could have made an adjustment to. I said, I've never seen them make that cover adjustment. I don't think they have that in their system. And Tom kind of let me down easy. He said, well, I don't know. I saw something last year against Green Bay. I don't know if that's what they were doing or not. Well, that's exactly what they were doing.
Wow.
He just didn't embarrass me.
Wow.
I went back and watched and I'm like, okay, he was better prepared for that meeting than I was. I'm not going to let that happen again.
Right.
And so now I'm not only going through the games this year, I'm going back through the games last year too. He forced me to be better prepared and be a better coach because he was so well prepared. And it was almost like a little competition. Like, hey, did you see that play? Did you see that play? Remember that play from 3 years ago? Yeah. And so, but I love that because it was very, Tom did it with grace. He could have just said, hey, coach, why don't you go look at this game?
Right.
But he didn't. But that's kind of the way he was. And because he was so well prepared, it forced me to be. And when I say he was hard to coach, I mean that truly as a compliment.
Right.
So I have a question for Ray.
Yeah, go.
So Ray, going on your principles, I'm really interested. You build Bridgewater. With the experience you have today, how do you think about building a work structure and an organization? And how do you apply those principles? You meet so many great people, so many talented men and women. How do you go about picking your top people? Talk to me about your principles.
Yeah, I think he described it so well. It's the same. You're building a machine. You have to look, okay, what is your machine? I don't know where exactly here it is, but basically he describes it very well. Okay, what is a team like? What are the positions they play? What are the characteristics of the qualities that are necessary to play that position well? How does that person then have to interact with you? They've got to understand what you want in terms of that job. How do they react to pain? Okay, pain. How do they react to failure? I'm listening to them. Okay, how do you react to failure? I have a principle. Pain plus reflection equals progress, right? In other words, so how do you feel about when you're knocked back? What do you do with that? Do you hide it? Are you embarrassed about your mistakes, or do you go at it? Do you find it? So it's these elements. So you have to build a machine. And the machine is what that organization is. What are your goals? You'd have to know where your goals are. How do you build the machine? What is the attribute for each one of those? How do I do the testing? I do testing of people, okay? He does testing of people. We do testing. How do they fit into that? He's looking for attributes. I'm looking for attributes. What is that attribute necessary for that job? How do they work together, okay? And how do you orchestrate it? It's the same. All of this can be even systemized and computerized, these principles and the ways you do it.
So if I'm talking about testing, let's just role play right now because I want to see how you apply those principles. If you're trying to hire a great managing director or a CIO for Bridgewater back in the day, and you love him, I mean, he's a 10 out of 10. He's a Tom Brady for you, but he wants $10 and you think he should be making $6. How do you fill that gap? Do you just quit or do you just keep pursuing?
We talk about goals and values and what are you after? Okay, what matters to me? To me, like I have certain values in the culture. You have to have a culture. Mine is meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truthfulness and radical transparency. Does it mean something to be on this particular team or what? And also the other side of it. Am I fair with you? I believe that I have to be the far side of fair. I've got to be generous to you. How are we with each other? And what is our ultimate goal? These are the things that we have to agree on.
And so Bill, Ray said something a minute or so ago that is very interesting and really jumped out at me as I was reading your book. And because this is a family show and a family network, I'm going to use the sanitized version, which is 4 important words. I messed that up. It's not what you say, and I admire your transparency and your directness in this. But admitting mistakes, and that's something we all make them. Tell us how you got to that, how you learned about that, and how to best deal with mistakes that you made.
Well, I think the number one area for me, Jason, is when time is of the essence, and that's in a game. You come to the sideline, something bad happened out on the field, we got to fix it. What's wrong? And the quickest way to fix it is if I can say, I messed that up. It's my fault. Everybody else keep doing what you're doing. I'll make the adjustment. It all takes care of it.
Yeah.
But if we all sit there and it's like, well, should I do this? Should I have done that? Should he have done something else? Well, sometimes you have to figure that out. Okay, you play a little bit wider, you play a little bit tighter, you get back up a little bit. Here's how we're going to handle that. But sometimes it's as simple as just, I screwed it up.
Yeah.
It's my fault. Keep doing what you're doing. We're fine. I'll make the adjustment. It won't happen again.
Is there a time that really sticks out in your mind when that happened?
Oh, multiples. And I've done it. It was a bad call. I called the wrong defense against the wrong personnel group.
Yeah.
It was a bad call. I'll never do that again. That's my fault. Forget that play. Next play.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, it was my fault. I should have been in this gap. I was too wide. I got it. Okay, great. We don't have to talk to everybody else. Keep doing what they're doing. But in football, you give up a 20-yard run. Oh, should I have done this? Should I have done that? Should I have done this? You have 4 or 5 guys thinking like, hey, was it me? Okay, no, here's what it was.
Right.
This takes care of it. Okay, we're done.
Because one of the things you point out in the book is that by doing that as a leader, you essentially give people who work for you permission to do the same thing and also set the expectation that they will also own their mistakes. And do you remember a time when that
just
happened?
like you said, we all make them.
Yeah.
We all make them. So own them, correct them, and put it behind us. And it's every day. We make them every day. Multiple every day.
The attitude about mistakes, the attitude about failures, the attitude about weaknesses. That's everything. I mean, that's a huge part of it. In any business you'll be in, it's the attitude, and you can see the attitude. So when it's clear and you reinforce that, okay, and so you create a culture.
And one of the two things that you guys share, one of the things that I really admire is the radical transparency and honesty and just getting to the point. I feel like so many people BS around and you never get anywhere. You're like dancing around. And it's like, that makes it awkward. Where did you get that? And why did you think that was so important to build out Bridgewater?
Well,
as one of your principles.
I mean, it's exactly the same. He's playing a game. I'm playing a game. There's the in the moment, and then there's going into it on the next day, whenever day you sit back and you watch the films and you learn from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know that fundamentally you've got to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's always reflection on mistakes and learning. Personal mistakes, systematic mistakes. You can't avoid it if you want to be a winner. It'll sort you out, right?
Yeah.
You don't do these things, you're gone, right?
So how would you use those principles? I'm going to ask you now for some advice. Ray, as a new owner of an NBA team and WNBA team, how would you apply your principles to build out a great team?
Know what your goals are. And I'd love to turn to him too. Okay, know what your goals are, what your trade-offs are about the goals. Everything is a 5-step process. Know what your goals are. On the way to your goals, you're going to encounter your problems, your obstacles, okay? Identify your obstacles. You have to identify them and not tolerate them. Number 3 is diagnose them to the root cause. The root cause. Is that root cause a weakness of you, a weakness of them? Something, what is the root cause? Once you have that root cause, you have to change that thing to make it good. Number 4 is then you have to design to make a change. You have to do something. Is it the person? Is it the behavior? Your machine working. And then once you make the design, you've got to do it. You've got to follow through in doing it. And in my opinion, just life is these 5 steps over and over. What is my goal? Get it clear. Okay, on the way there, I'm going to have my problems and obstacles. Diagnose them, the root cause. Get the right players. And anyway, that's it.
Bill, you've played for multiple owners. No need to mention names. That's not important. What is important is, from your experience and your lens, what makes a good owner, good management team to support what you do on the field?
Well, again, I think it starts with what Ray just said, is what are your goals? What are your goals? Is it the bottom line? Is it financial? Is it championships? You know, and you've been a player, and I'm sure that you felt like as a player, you wanted a path to a championship. And when something got in the way of that path, you wanted it removed.
Yeah.
Whatever it happened to be, whether it's travel or, personnel or the way something was handled, that it affected your performance as a player. And I would say those two don't necessarily align. Financial success and on the field success, that there could be a trade-off there that I think as an owner, you'll have to make a decision as to, what you probably want the best of both, but ultimately which one is the driving force. And it's probably like that in a lot of businesses. What are your goals? And if goals are, truly winning, as a player that you want to remove every obstacle that's could be in the way of a manager or a player of achieving his winning goals. Financially, that could be expensive.
Yeah.
So, Ray, it's interesting, over the years of, covering Wall Street and investing for Bloomberg, I got to watch you build this firm. And part of one of the underlying principles, I believe, is this notion of innovation and always sort of changing and evolving. And both of you, and we'll get to Coach in a second, have sort of pushed into new markets. How do you think about that? How do you think about innovation? What are the principles underlying how you go on and build into something new?
I don't know if it's much thinking about it as much as feeling it. You feel the excitement, you feel the pull. One of the principles that he's phrased so well, and I also, is being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Okay.
Or I might say also the reverse. I'm sometimes uncomfortable if I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Okay. Because we were talking about this, what the feeling is like. Okay, that partially it's the striving for something, beyond yourself, the growth, the excitement of that feeling. Okay. And then partially it's also the knowing that you, what is it that can make you better? Or where should I worry about? I have another principle. If you worry, you don't need to worry. And if you don't worry, you need to worry.
Oh,
Okay?
boy.
Because if you worry, then you'll take care of what you're worrying about. And if you don't worry, it's going to hit you probably.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of this in both of us as we start to think about striving for things, getting better, because it's not where you are. It's the action, it's the evolution that gets you excited to be better and better. Why is he doing what he's doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing still?
So, let's talk about a major decision, Bill, that you make. You're arguably, maybe inarguably, the best NFL coach of all time, but widely considered that. And, could have gone off and done a lot of things in the same way that, Alex could have gone off and done a lot of things when he retired from baseball. Instead, you're like, you know what? I'm going to go into one of the most challenging sports environments in probably history, which is college sports and specifically college football.
Today.
And that's what you're doing. You're at UNC. How do you make that decision? Were you thinking that, maybe you were too comfortable and you wanted to be uncomfortable? Like, how does that decision happen?
I've always wanted to be in college football.
Okay.
I grew up in it at the Naval Academy. And I tried to go into college football after college, but that didn't really work out. So I ended up with the Baltimore Colts and Coach Marchibroda there. And then that path kind of led me through the NFL. And that's worked out all right. But it was an opportunity to go to a great school, great institution, with a great brand.
Yeah.
That hasn't achieved what they want to achieve on the football field, and so there's a lot of newness, a lot of learning, but that's been exciting for me, and I have embraced it. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like on the golf course, I'm more comfortable in the trap than I am in the middle of the fairway. Because it's usually going to go in the trap.
Yeah.
And once I'm there, you've already got a bogey. So just, get down in 3 from the trap. But yes, the challenge and the newness and learning and finding out new things and figuring out how you can apply principles in a different environment is really exciting to me. And I enjoy the process.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, too, because I don't know if there's ever been a coaching change, especially from pro to college, that has actually increased the attention on somebody in the way that it has with you. It reminds me a little bit. You come in here like, it's almost like moving from the the Rangers to the Yankees in terms of the scrutiny. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, that was a real awakening for me because, Coach, I think we've talked about this. We had like 3 or 4 beat writers in Texas, probably 2 in Seattle. And then you get to New York and there's 40 or 50 people literally watching your every move and what you're hitting and what pitch. It was a lot of attention. So, Coach, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the attention? How do you do that in your world over your career?
Yeah, control what you can control. The noise, the expectations, all the things that are going on the periphery. Just focus on your job and control what you can control. And the biggest thing for me, really, and probably the number one principle in my life is just improvement. And how do you improve? You do your job, you pay attention to the details that'll help you do your job, you work hard, and then ultimately you put the team first and the team's successful.
On to Cincinnati.
Yes.
I love that. That's one of the greatest lines. We're on to Cincinnati.
And keep improving.
That's right.
Wait, remind us of that line.
And if you
what's on to Cincinnati?
Well, what I remember is, some reporter was asking them some silly questions over and over again or something. And
we had just gotten slaughtered in Kansas City on Monday night. And when your team plays bad, it's not the players. I mean, the players might have played bad too, but it's obviously bad coaching. Right? I mean, your team goes out there and gets beat by 4 touchdowns. It's not all the players. There's some bad coaching. So take accountability for that. You're the one responsible for it. So we got murdered out there. And is this the end of the Patriots? Is this the end of Tom Brady? Is this the end of Belichick? Is this the end of the Patriots? And we played Cincinnati next week. And you know what? The Kansas City game was over. It was in the books. There's nothing we can do about it. And we're just going to go on and get ready for Cincinnati. And we bounced back, beat them, and ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. But a lot of people counted us out after that crushing loss. Kansas City was absolutely the dominant team that night, both coaching, playing, and everything else.
Yeah.
But we controlled. We moved on to the next challenge, and we actually got better over the course of the year. And and we're able to beat Seattle in the Super Bowl, which was a big win and a really big turning point for the season because we still played good football several years after that too.
But Jason, the reason why that meant so much to me, and Ray, I'm going to bring you in on this, is because it taught me a lesson. Coach is there, maybe it was a Tuesday morning or Tuesday after practice. He's got his hoodie, his gray hoodie, and looking all cool. And the guy asked 2 or 3 different questions, the same question, different ways, and he said it 2 or 3 times. He goes, like I said, we're on to Cincinnati. We're on to Cincinnati. And what that means to me is we're on to the next at-bat. We're on to the next trade. We're on to the next interview. And in life and business and everything with your kids, you got to move on.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is traders, hitters, they can't adjust and they can't move on. They're still on the Kansas City game.
Right.
Right? That's over. We got to move forward. So I'm sure that's maybe one of your principles.
It's fundamental, right? Okay, he wants to improve. He wants to learn. Okay, that's passive. And then the past is past. What you get is lessons. There's only the future.
Can't change the past.
No, but there's the future.
Right.
So it's okay. What you do is you think about those mistakes and how your approach to the mistakes. We're saying it again. Your approach to mistakes and how do I then learn from those mistakes? The people who learn from those mistakes, pain plus reflection equals progress. If you learn from those mistakes every time, then you go on, then you'll be better. It's a journey.
I think the big thing for me has always been don't blame anybody and don't make excuses. Figure out what went wrong, correct it, and move on.
Yeah. And so, when you think about just going back to your new job, Bill, you get into this, sort of exciting thing. Maybe some days it does feel like you're in the trap, but there is, massive upside opportunity in college sports right now. I think it's fair to say we've never been in a moment like this where the business of college football and college sports are so dramatically in flux. And so what's your playbook going into a situation like this when you're bringing all of this professional experience? You have a deep knowledge of the college game, obviously, going back to when you were a kid. What are the things that are on your mind that you can contribute to the success of UNC? But also, let's be honest, people are going to be looking to you as a model for what college football looks like going forward.
Right. Well, I'd say the coaching is the coaching. Football is football. The hash marks are different. There's some modifications, but that is what it is. I think the big thing is we'll see what the rules are in college football once the House settlement is in place, and I'm sure there'll be some modifications in that as we go forward, as different things happen and get modified in one way or another. We'll see what all that is, but we'll have to adapt. We'll have to adjust. That's part of life. That's part of your job.
Right. And just as a reminder that the House settlement, for those listening who haven't followed it as like closely as all of us have, is essentially a settlement between, the NCAA and the U.S. House of Representatives that's going to give back pay essentially to college athletes and then set a cap effectively going forward for how much colleges can pay their athletes. Is that a fair sort of like overview?
Yes.
Okay.
It's pay, it's roster size, it's a whole host of things, how the counting is going to work, what the disciplinary process will be, and what the discipline will be for violations and so forth and so on. I'm sure it'll be very comprehensive, and I'm sure it will have multiple revisions,
Right.
Over the next several months or a couple of years as things start to settle.
Yeah.
Coach, we were talking about you have an economics degree from college, so you're really good with numbers. You were really, really clever and smart on how you dealt with salary cap. That was always kind of a dance. You got a lot of players to take some less money because they wanted to be part of your team and your culture to win championships. Now you fast forward to college. How is your pitch different to Tom Brady or to a 17-year-old quarterback you're trying to recruit to go to North Carolina?
Well, again, my job is the same as it's always been, is to try to help the player become the best player that he can be and help our team be as successful as they can be on the field and off the field. So those are really the goals, and I'll do my best to help every player achieve his goals, and I believe in our process and our program, and if they truly want to be great and they were willing to come in and put in the work, then I'm confident that we'll get them to a position where they'll be ready for the next level, or they'll reach their full potential.
You imagine if you had a son and you get to play for Coach Bill Belichick.
Oh my God, the phone rings and it's like, can I talk to Will? It's like, what? Okay.
I'm going to North Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on.
Coach, your day, how is it different being the head coach of the Patriots versus being the head coach of North Carolina football? Pretty similar?
There are a lot of similarities. I would say that one of the biggest differences in college football from the NFL is the recruiting aspect of it. Next year will be our 26th recruiting class, but we're also recruiting 27 players and even some 28 players. We just finished a portal, and the volume of players is a lot. Process is kind of the same. It's just high school instead of college, but the volume is significantly bigger.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. The ecosystem is a little bit different in terms of like who's coming in around these players. I guess it's evolved, even always evolving.
But there's also a lot more movement.
Yeah,
kids are transferring in high school to different high schools, and obviously with the portal, the transfers in college football are, those numbers are escalating, exponentially. And so just trying to keep track of everybody, how many years they have left, what their eligibility is, processing through the academics and all that, just the volume that goes with it is different than the NFL, where here's the draft class, they're all draft eligible, draft them when you get your turn, and then, play them. It's a little more straightforward. There are definitely more moving parts.
Well, also, like in general, in the NFL, you're dealing with contracts, the players under contract, right? That alone. You have effective free agency in college right now, at least for the moment.
Without contracts.
Without contracts,
yes.
Exactly.
So the contract issue is one that needs to be at some point addressed, on the college landscape. It will be, but right now it's in flux.
But what's been the biggest surprise for you, Coach, like getting to UNC and sort of the college level?
I'd say no real great surprises. I've been aware of college football based on our recruiting process and scouting process, but some of the working for a public company or a public university is a little bit different than working for a private team. I'd say that's one difference. And the age of the kids is a little bit different, but in the end, they have less bad habits. And so I think you're able to, build more good habits, but they're not as experienced as the players we get at the National Football League level. So, but again, it's just adjusting, and there's a level of newness and a little level of learning that I need to acquire, and I'm in the process of doing that. And it's exciting.
And what's interesting about him is his principles for dealing with that excitement.
Yeah. All right.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, let's go there.
And I think about your principles about the big things, the little things. Maybe you answer,
Details.
Okay. In other words, there's the big game, and then there's the every game, and it's the everything that you're doing every day. And so there's lots of times in the book he describes the big attention, the big game, but it's how you do every day and what that's like. And so I think in terms of thinking about him in that position, that's how I think he'll be in that position. I think that's how you are. It's that the glamour, all of that. Okay, that's secondary. It's back to those basics. And that's where you'll go to. I know it.
Is that a fair distillation?
Everybody needs to get their hands dirty and get ready to go to work. Everything matters. You're in a lot of close games. It's very competitive, and what makes the difference? I don't know. Is it this detail? Is it that detail? Is it another detail? Is it training? Is it execution? Is it communication? You want to try to raise all of them to the highest level possible, and put the best team out on the field that can compete with other great schools in that conference.
And that's what he's focusing on.
Yeah. Put on your hoodie sweatshirt and get to work.
I'm ready.
I think that's what we're talking about here. All right, one last principle, and then we're going to do a lightning round. Oh, I put you on the spot.
Life is an adventurous journey in which it's going to take you through all this evolution. And I think it's important to know where you are in that journey and what reality is like, and that discovery process. And then, so I'm at a phase of my life, he's at a phase of his life, and how we are now make the most of that phase of the life to have our best journey, so that when we sit there at the end, we feel good about our journey. I think that's most important, to put it in perspective and realize it's all a machine with lots of love and other feelings about that.
What do you think, Bill? What's your final thought on principles? What's the one thing you want people to take away from your book?
Again, my whole life is improvement. How do you get better? Learning every day, understanding what it is you can do, how to do it, and then applying yourself. And whatever aspect of life that is, always learning, always trying to find better ways, or find more efficient ways, or find ways that work better for you. And so learning is a big part of teaching. I'm a teacher, but I need to learn to teach better.
Evolve well.
That's the key. I like that. Yeah. All right, we're going to move to rapid fire. So this is 10 questions. We'll, go back and forth. Bill, you answer first, then Ray, and then we'll just do it. So first thing that comes to your mind, starting with Bill. What's one word to describe your deal-making style?
Value and fair.
You use 2 words. But, yeah.
Fair value.
I like his words.
Okay.
Seconded.
What's more important to you, your gut or data when making decisions?
Depends on the decision. Some data, some gut.
Tom Brady.
Data.
Right.
I think for me, it's aligning them. They have to both line up. If they both line up, but if I had to pick one, it would be the gut.
All right. Who's your dream deal-making partner, Bill?
Ray.
Good answer. Ray?
Bill?
Okay. That was going to be weird if you didn't say the other way. Go ahead.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received on deal making or business?
Control what you can control.
Who you're with is everything.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given, Bill?
The word no. Or can't. Scratch out the T. Can't.
Be successful in the conventional ways of making a lot of money and having all the stardom. Be successful in that way. That's a mistake.
I like that.
It's instead means, what are you really going for?
What's your hype song before a big meeting or a big negotiation?
Or big game?
Or a big game?
I'll say Bounce. Bon Jovi.
Oh, I like
one.
that. Love
Right?
John.
My way.
There you go.
Sinatra.
All right, we've discussed both of your books, and you have multiple, Ray. What's your favorite, either your favorite memoir or your favorite book, Bill?
Principles.
There we go. And yours?
Joseph Campbell Heroes of a Thousand Faces.
Okay.
If you can only watch one sport for the rest of your life, which one is it?
For me, it's global macro.
Oh my God.
What's going on in the world right now and betting on it?
The most Bloomberg answer that's ever been given on this show. Good Lord. All right. What team do you want to see win a championship more than any, Bill?
Well, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. I was hoping that was going to be your answer.
Yeah.
What do you
That was
think,
a trick
Ray?
question.
Is it going to be like the Federal Reserve or something? What are you going to say?
What team?
What team?
Our team.
Okay.
All
Our
right.
national team.
There
Our
you
new
go.
administration.
Okay.
So I think for both of you, you both have great admirers out there, people that want to have a career like yours. If there's a young person out there that wants to have a career just like Coach Bill Belichick, what advice would you give them?
Embrace starting at the bottom.
Ray?
Play the game. When I was starting, I started at 12. You can play the game when you're 12. You know, get in the markets and make your decisions and then go from there.
All right. We knew this was going to be a really interesting conversation, and you guys really delivered. Thank you so much, Ray Dalio, Bill Belichick. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.